Welcome back. This is part 2 of evaluating the quality of the test, and this part will focus on the RER. So let's get started on that. So this would be number 3 in our score the quality of the test, which is let's review what the RER is and how we may score it. So here's our panel on the RER, which stands for respiratory exchange ratio. It is that ratio down here. It is a ratio between the amount of carbon dioxide produced in metabolism and the oxygen used. And that ratio really shows the difference between aerobic exercise and anaerobic exercise. We would consider aerobic exercise to be everything under 1, although that might often is a mixture between aerobic and anaerobic. But over 1, and especially over 1.1, we would consider this to be anaerobic. So aerobic would be the use of oxygen. They're able to continue that workout. And then anaerobic is they are unable to continue to produce enough oxygen, so the body does it anaerobically. So in this particular test, if we look, we see that it never makes it above 1. We would say that the patient's effort, while it did take some effort, they never moved into the anaerobic. They never were pushed into that area. Now, this could be because of limitations due to musculoskeletal issues or shortness of breath or other issues like that, which we don't know of. And then we'll notice that we see a range between here, the blue, which would be aerobic, and the green, anaerobic, where it gets marked. All right. So when we look at this number, it is actually a measurement of the amount of effort the patient had to put forward on the test. And it is recommended that we have a test that reaches at least 1.1. Anything less than that will be considered submaximal. It could still be useful, but it's not the quality of test we're looking for. Unless, of course, it's limited by the patient due to their conditions. Let's look at another one. We talked about that, but here's an important point to remember. As the body uses aerobic exercise, it tends to burn more fats, and as it moves into anaerobic, it moves to carbohydrates, because fats are slower to metabolize and carbohydrates are much faster. So as the energy demands of the body increase, the body will move over to carbohydrates. And we have a chart on that. Let's take a look at it real quick. Here it is. So if we look at this chart, we can see as someone is exercising or moving and their RER is 0.71, they're at 100% fats burning. If they move up, as they move up, we see at 0.85, it's a 50-50 between fats and carbohydrates. We hit 0.95 and we see it's an 80 to 20, a little bit over 80, less than 20. But it's as the exercise continues, as the load continues, we see a movement away from fats to carbohydrates. And at 1, you're at 100% carbohydrates, because the body is under load and is requiring energy much faster. We'll also notice in our VO2 test results that the above graph here, calories burned, also follows this same idea of substrates. So here we see fat is being burned in the aerobic range. As we come up here, we see the aerobic and anaerobic mixed together. So we see a division between fats and carbohydrates, and as we get up in here to just anaerobic, we're just seeing carbohydrates being used as fuel. All right, so let's move on past that. Look at some examples. That was our first one. In this particular patient, we see that they start at 0.8 and they clearly move over 1 and clearly way above it to 1.2, which is excellent effort. This is probably one of the highest efforts we've seen on any of our tests. But we noticed the short distance between these two, from moving from aerobic to anaerobic, happened in less than 45 seconds, less than a minute. So we have that really short endurance that they had to move from fats to carbohydrates really, really fast because they could not endure the exercise for very long. So we have a good effort. So that's a great one. I would score that 2 points. They get the full 2 points on their RER on that one. We look at this next one. We see an effort level that reaches up to, it looks like maybe 9.5. This would be submaximal still. They never did get fully into anaerobic. There's a mix there. It would be considered submaximal test. The effort isn't great enough to consider it a maximal test. Although the data could still be good. We see they scored low, so it's possible they were limited by muscle skeletal issues or some other issue we didn't know about. We go to this one. We can first notice this is a superior. This is an athlete, and we see him start off at 8. And I'm sure if we looked at their heart rate, we would see that there's a continual load going up. But they're able to adapt. They have a really great aerobic range here. And then they begin to climb a little bit. But even here, they're just barely over 9. And it marks it as aerobic. That's probably for other reasons. We wouldn't probably trust that. But what we would say here is that their effort, even as an athlete, our test did not push them far enough to reach their maximum effort level. This is still way under 1, so not a max. So I thought one of the things we might do is show the calculation of how the RER is calculated, so you get the foundation, the basics of it. So if we go over here, I'm going to jump out of here. I'm going to go over to the cardio coach. And of course, we know this particular table. And remember, if you remember on our I'll just bring it up so I show you again, because if you'll notice, it's VCO2 divided by VO2. So if we come back over here and we pull up our calculator, let's just pick one. And maybe we'll pick this, I don't know, let's pick this 1 minute 30-second one. And we see that it's the CO2, which is 9.8, or let's see, am I in the right? No, 7.5. So let's take 7.5 on the calculator, and we're going to divide it, and that 7.5, we're going to divide it by the VO2, 9.9. 9.9. And we equal 0.75 here. So if we follow this all the way across here, we get to 7.5. And that's how it's calculated. So it's a ratio between the CO2 and O2. Anyway, that way you kind of know the basis of that calculation. So going back one more time, when we look at scoring this, if we go back to our original score, we should have a rating of 1.1, give it 2 points. Most of the ones we've seen, we'd probably give it a point, 1 point. And maybe some, we might even just give it 0 points. So if we had someone that did a great heart thing, a great slope on their heart rate, and the length of the test is good, they got 15 points, but they didn't really get an RER above 1.1 or greater, then we would maybe give them 1 point or 0 points. So they would have somewhere here by level 3, 15 to 16 points. Okay, we're going to move on to the next part, which will be looking to see if the anaerobic threshold was reached, and that's 1 point or no points. So let's stop right here.